everyone. Thank you for attending the How to Become Certified workshop. My name is Regence Norwoods. I'm a Senior Certification Officer here at the Department of Procurement Services. I'm also a licensed CPA with about 20 years of accounting and auditing experience. So if you're lucky, you might get me as your certification officer. So is everyone in the right place to How to Become Certified? How many of you have started the certification application process? Nobody yet? Okay, so good. You're starting at the right place. This workshop will provide information on who is qualified, what type of information you'll need during the application process, and the things to avoid to make your application process smooth. So who we are the Department of Procurement Services. We are the contracting authority for the procurement of goods and services for the city of Chicago. We work together as a team and with our customers to guarantee an open, fair, and timely process by establishing, communicating, and enforcing superior business practices. What we do, DPS is committed to providing information, resources, and tools to assist you in your efforts to compete for City of Chicago contracting opportunities. We accept and review new applications for certification. We do annual no-change affidavit reviews, and we do the recertification application reviews, which are required every 5 years once you are certified. We also ensure contract compliance with negotiated contractual participation goals. We set standards for contract participation for M, W, BEPD, and VBE, as well as DBE and ACDBE. We assist vendors through our websites. We have two, the cityofchicago.org/procurement and the chicago.mwdbe.com website, which is where you would go to start the certification application, which is all online. So there are 6 City of Chicago certification programs. The 4 local programs are listed first. It's the MBE, which is the Minority-Owned Business Enterprise, the WBE, which is the Women-Owned Business Enterprise, the VBE, which is the Veteran-Owned Business Enterprise, and the BEPD, the businesses owned by people with disabilities. The 2 federal programs we oversee is the DBE, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, and the Airport Concessions Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. So once you submit your applications online at chicago.mwdbe.com, there's an application fee for the local program. It's $250. There's no fee for the DBE, CDBE program, which is the federal program. We accept certified checks, cashier's checks, or money orders. So once you're done with the application process, you'll receive and you've submitted it, you'll receive an invoice. And once you receive the invoice, you'll pay the $250 fee, and your application will then be reviewed by a certification officer. So new October 2017, it was the VBE. This is for the veteran. This is a veteran program. A veteran is a person who has served in the U.S. Armed Forces and was honorably discharged. Applicants must provide their discharge papers, the DD-214 or the DD-215. If a veteran does not have those discharge papers, they would obtain that from the Veterans Administration. What is a VBE, the Veteran-Owned Business Enterprise? This is the definition, but in summary, it is a firm that's 51% owned by a veteran. The veteran must manage, control, make the major decisions and the daily business, and oversee the daily business operations of the firm. The firm must be certified by the city as a veteran-owned business. It can also be certified by Cook County as a veteran business and certified by the state of Illinois, or the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. If you're already an MBE or WBE certified and you would like to add the VBE certification, you would file an expansion request and submit the DD-214 and DD-215. So what are the benefits of certification and why should you get certified? Being certified provides visibility. Once your firm is certified, you're listed in a directory which is accessible to the general public. There are minority, women, veteran, and disadvantaged participation goals or credits. There's also businesses in the private sector that seek out certified firms for products and or services. Also, the City of Chicago has a target market program which provides exclusive bidding to certified minority and women-owned business enterprises. This allows certified businesses to take 100% of the contract because there are no subcontractor goals associated with the project. So do you qualify? The qualifying groups are as follows: African American, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, women, veteran, persons with disabilities, and other individuals who can prove social and economic disadvantage. So if you are not one of these ethnicities, you could file an affidavit and it would be reviewed to determine if you can prove your social and economic disadvantage. The firm must be a local business. So the principal place of business must be within the 6 counties: Cook County, DuPage, Kane, Lake, McHenry, and Will. For the federal program, it could be anywhere in Illinois. The firm must be 51% owned, controlled, and managed by a minority, woman, veteran, and or person with a disability or socially or economically disadvantaged individual. The firm must not be an established business, meaning the gross receipts average over 3 years for non-construction firms must not exceed $38.9 million. Construction firms are subject to the SBA size standards, which are averaged over 5 years. For the DBE program, the gross receipts must not exceed $23.98 million, averaged over 3 years, and for the ACDBE is not to exceed $56.42 million for most firms, but there are some exceptions. Your personal net worth standard, what that means is your assets less your liabilities should not exceed $2.2 million for the local program, and this only applies to construction companies. For the federal programs, that should not exceed $1.3 million, and that amount is adjusted periodically. The calculation of your personal net worth excludes the value of your primary residence and your interest in the certified firm. So when doing this calculation, you would exclude your primary residence and your interest in the firm. What we need from you. What we need from you is the contact information. So when you're entering your information online, you have to make sure that your contact information is updated, your email, your phone number, your address, because that is the way we will be contacting you, primarily through email. So check your emails. You want to also specify the type of certification you're seeking in the application process. So if you're a minority and if you're a woman, you would apply for both at the same time. Same with DBE and ACDBE. If you're applying for the federal program, apply for them together. There's only, for the local program, there's only one fee. For the BEPD, this requires a Schedule G form, and this is for the people with disabilities. You would obtain that form from the Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities. Again, the VBE, if you're applying for that, you would have to provide your discharge papers. What else do we need? We need your ownership information, your employee information, facility information, financial information, and licenses. So if your firm requires a certain license, you would have to provide that type of professional license or business license. Proof of eligibility documents. So this information is to help us understand if the owner of the firm understands, and we would make that determination based on eligibility requirements. So we would look at your resume, the evidence of executed contracts and or invoices, so proof that you actually have the experience or are going to get that experience in the short term. We'll also require your driver's license, your birth certificate. So for the federal program, we look at if you're a U.S. citizen or have naturalization papers. The proof of equity contribution, so your initial contribution to start up the firm, we would look at that. So we want to see if you actually contributed to the firm or if there were others who are taking interest in that firm that may not be qualified for the program. We're also looking at the signatory card of your bank accounts to see if you're that primary person on that card. We're looking at the organizational chart and equipment listing. So if your firm is a construction company and you need certain types of equipment to do the codes that you're requesting, we would look at that. And loan information. So if you were the one who obtained any business loans, we would like to see that too. So the financial documents section is going to be presented by Maria. Maria Prado is a partner at one of the CPA firms that we use to also review some of the files.
Thank you, Regents. It's on. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So I will describe some of the financial documents that we require for the certification. First of all, tax returns. We require 3 years of income tax returns, both for the business and for the individual qualifying owners. We require 5 years for construction companies. And we require Form 4506T and W-2s and 1099s. And again, the personal net worth statement. I'll describe a little bit of what we look for in this information. The reason why we require corporate and individual tax returns is so that we can verify that the company is actually in operation. Additionally, the tax returns may also provide information for us to corroborate your net worth as stated in the personal net worth statement. Form 4506, I just want to describe what that is. Form 4506T is an IRS document that is used to retrieve past tax returns that are on file with the IRS. This document must specify the type of tax return, whether you are filing a 1040, which is for an individual personal tax return, or for an unincorporated business or a pass-through entity, or if you're using an 1120, which is a corporate tax return, or for W-2s or 1099s. The 4506 must also be signed. This is one of the most common errors that we find. Many times the 4506 is not signed. We also find the same error for tax returns. And since tax returns are now filed electronically in most cases, most people get a copy of their tax return and file it away. We require that the tax return be signed. So many times that's an issue, and we may come back to you to request the tax return to be signed. Forms W-2s and 1099s. W-2 forms report the wages that are paid to each of the employees. Forms 1099 report the annual payments made to independent contractors, consultants, and law firms. And again, as Regents mentioned, personal net worth statements exclude the interest in the applicant firm and the personal residence. I'm going to go on to describe a little bit of what each of the business types means. Just want to make sure we're moving along. Okay. Starting with the sole proprietorship. The sole proprietor is typically owned by one person and has no legal existence apart from the person himself or herself. Usually, the sole proprietor is operating under the name of the owner, and sometimes the business operates under a different name. When a business operates under a different name, it must have an assumed name certificate. And you must submit that to us as well. The second type of business is the general partnership. In a general partnership, there are two or more people that go into business together without any formalities. A partnership agreement may or may not exist. I want to mention a little bit about what the advantages and disadvantages of each of these type of entities is. I'm just going to touch on that. In a sole proprietor, it's a very easy type of entity to establish because you really don't have to file any legal paperwork unless you're using an assumed name. The disadvantage is that in a sole proprietor, you may be liable for the debts of the business, and you may be liable for other corporate responsibilities. In a general partnership, it's very similar. The owners take on a lot of responsibility for the business, and it's also very easy to establish. The next business structure is the corporation. A corporation is treated as an entity that's completely separate from its shareholders, and it allows other people to invest in the business. Some of the things that we look for when we're reviewing an application is whether the company is in good standing with the state. We look for the articles of incorporation or a certificate of incorporation. We look for bylaws, and we look for copies of the stock certificates that have been issued. We also look for meeting minutes. And all of these documents must be consistent with each other. One of the errors that we find is that sometimes business owners prepare these documents on their own, and they prepare them as they're requested. So for example, they might have the articles of incorporation, and that's what they submit to us. Then we request the stock certificates, and then the person goes off and prepares stock certificates. But there's no consistency between the articles of incorporation and the stock certificates. So we look for consistency in all of the documentation that you're presenting. Usually, your articles of incorporation will state the number of shares that are authorized by the corporation and the number of shares that are issued upon the corporate being instated, upon the corporation being established. And it also states the dollar amount that you're contributing to the company as your initial investment for that stock that you are receiving. And a lot of errors that we find are also related to the initial contribution. So sometimes business owners establish a company and create the articles of incorporation, and they do not make a deposit to the corporate bank account. Or the deposit they make to the corporate bank account is different than the amount that's stated in the articles of incorporation. So when we request information about the amount that the owner contributed to the business, we get an amount. And many times it's different than what's stated in the articles of incorporation. And it's not necessarily required to be the same, but it must be defined differently when you start to operate the business. In a way, to demonstrate how that's defined is in your business financial statements. So the initial financial statements of the business will have the initial capital contribution, and that must be consistent with your articles of incorporation. So let's say you contribute more capital to the business because you feel that the business needs more capital. You can contribute more capital to the business, and that's called additional capital contribution. So it's not part of the initial investment. Once you've established the corporation, you can also make loans to the company. And that is one of the reasons that a corporation is an independent entity, and it must be treated as an independent, separate entity. So when you make a loan to the corporation, you must identify it as a loan so that it's clear that there is a capital contribution. There may be additional capital, and then there may be loans that you issue to the company. And when the company is able to, the company will pay you back. We also recommend that you write loan notes to document that a particular deposit in the company is a loan from you. Going on to the next business structure, a limited partnership. A limited partnership is one where the limited partners are more like stakeholders in a corporation. They're not liable for the debts beyond their own contribution. And if there is an assumed name certificate must be filed, or a certificate of limited partnership. In all cases, we will require bank account information, and we will require most likely the initial bank statement. The initial bank statement should also be consistent with your initial capital contribution. I forgot to mention the pros and cons about a corporation in a limited partnership, so I'll go into that now. With a corporation, one of the advantages is that since the corporation is treated as a separate entity, the corporation is liable for its own debts. And one of the disadvantages is that, of course, it requires much more paperwork and legal documentation. And the same thing for a limited partnership. A limited partnership must have at least one general partner. And then both entities require a separate income tax return. So that in itself also requires more paperwork. There's different types of income tax reporting structures. for income tax purposes, the company or limited partnership may file and pay taxes as its own entity, or they may file a tax return, but the tax liability may be paid by the individual owners. And that must be selected, and it must be approved by the IRS. There are certain restrictions as to when you need to file to request that it be treated as a subchapter S corporation. I was going to say 1120S. The next business structure is the limited liability company. And this is a partnership that has a managing member or partner. And in this type of entity, we must have an operating agreement. And the same things apply for this type of entity. We will request a separate bank account information, and proof of equity contribution. And that's it for my section. Would you come back?
Okay, thanks, Maria. So the next few slides we'll discuss is related to the supplier and the distributor companies. There's separate requirements that are required for suppliers and distributors. A supplier must be a regular dealer, which is a firm that owns, operates, or maintains a store, a warehouse, or other establishment in which materials, supplies, articles, or equipment are bought, kept in stock, and regularly sold or leased to the public in the usual course of business. So for suppliers, for instance, if we're looking at a supplier, we'll go out and do a site visit to make sure that you actually have a warehouse or a storefront, that you're actually working, or you're actually operating as a regular dealer. A distributor, firms operating as a distributor are identified as having a direct relationship with the manufacturer or distributor to distribute its goods and products within a specified territory or region. The goods and products are not available or sold to the general public. So if you're actually a distributor, we would look at distributor agreements that you have with manufacturer companies. The purpose of this is, for the local programs, we don't certify brokers. So a broker would be simply passing through, be the middle person between a distributor, supplier, and a customer. What's that? Yeah, broker drop ship. So they're just like this middle person. The firms acting as a broker are not eligible for the local program. So a person or entity that fills orders by purchasing or receiving supplies from a third-party supplier rather than out of its own existing inventory and provides no substantial service other than acting as a conduit between his or her supplier and his or her customer is a broker. So there's your definition. Oh, sorry. Okay. So after the applications are submitted, the process can take approximately 90 days from the day we receive all documents. Your application is checked to make sure we have all documentation. So a certification officer who's assigned your file may request more information. So you just need to make sure that you're responding to those requests timely. If you have any questions, the contact information will be on the request for information. And that'll be through the Q&A section. Once you're in the application, you'll see a section called Q&A. That's where all the correspondence will happen. And it will be linked to your email, so you'll get it through your email. The documents are thoroughly audited. You may receive a site visit. So For the local programs, we typically will do site visits for suppliers and distributors. We'll do for construction companies, for transportation companies, and all of the federal, for DBE and ACDBE applications, we'll do a site visit. If approved, your MBE or WBE, VBE, BEPD, for the local programs, your certification is valid for 5 years. But every 5 years, you go through a recertification process, so a less involved audit. The federal program is ongoing. You just file a no change affidavit annually. You don't have to go through the recertification process. We do have what's called, we do have an expedited process. This is an abbreviated application that may require less documentation, but a thorough audit is performed. So that's if you're already certified with an outside, if you already have an outside certification with the Chicago Minority Supplier Development Council, or CMSCC, or the Women in Business Development Center, the WBDC. So if you're already certified, then we have an abbreviated audit process. Maintaining certification. All vendors must submit an annual no change affidavit. So what you're doing here is reporting anything material that may have changed with your company year to year. You must notify our division regarding any organizational changes, business name changes. If your office changed, you would provide a copy of the lease to us. And again, all local vendors certified MBE, WBE, VBE, BEPD must recertify every 5 years. If your company has grown its services, you would apply for expansion of services. So if you wanted to add additional commodity codes, you would submit your request on company letterhead. It's an automated application. It's called an expansion application. You would include the NAICS codes, the North American Industrial Classification System codes, which is the commodity code, in which you're requesting. You'd provide evidence that you're required, that's required to prove that you can perform those services. So again, required licenses, copy of future and present contracts, any additional insurance that's needed, an updated resume to show that you actually have that experience. Sister agencies, so like Chicago Public Schools, Cook County, Chicago Park District, these are sister agencies. They also accept the City of Chicago certification. So once you're certified through the city and you wanted to bid on these different agency contracts, they would accept the City of Chicago certification. We don't accept their certification. We only have reciprocity with Cook County. So if you're certified with Cook County, the city would accept your certification. So the next couple of slides is what to avoid during the application process, common things for reasons of denial. If you provide unsubstantiated or if there's unsubstantiated questionable ownership and control, if we can't determine that that you're the minority, or that the woman is not controlling the firm, if you can't provide that, that's a common reason of being denied. There's an unclear description of critical functions and who is responsible. The company cannot substantiate where the startup funds came from, the initial capital. If you have outside employment and that takes the majority of your time, of the owner's time, so we'll question, how are you able to run your business if you have a full-time job? And that's not uncommon, but we would like to understand why that is or how you're able to operate that way. Maybe you're a startup and you still have a full-time job. The company is not located in one of the 6 county regions. So for the local program, if your company, so when we say that we're looking at the headquarters, we're looking at the majority of your employees, where are they working, or where are you as the owner working from? Because we have heard of owners working in different states, but they're managing the company, so that's a reason why they could be denied. The point of contact did not respond to requests for information in a timely manner. So again, like, check your emails, respond. We usually give you enough time to respond to make sure that all of that information is updated, and that you're checking your emails and you're responding timely to the request. If you need additional time, contact the certification officer. Let them know you're having trouble getting something, you'll need more time. But if you do not respond, that could be a big problem. So inconsistencies with the applicant firm name among various documents. Problems with contracts, they're missing, they're incomplete, they're not signed and executed by qualifying owners, or don't have corresponding proof of payments. So what we're looking with contracts is that you're actually, if you perform the work, we just don't need an invoice from your company, because anybody can do that. We actually need to see proof of payment or an executed contract signed by both parties. Mandatory and or required documents that are not attached, or no explanation is given as to why the documents are not available. So in the application, there's going to be a section of mandatory documents. That's obviously mandatory. So if it does not apply to your company, you need to provide a statement why it does not apply. For instance, if you're a startup company, we ask, one of the mandatory is to provide 3 years of taxes. So you would explain, this is not applicable, I've only been in operation for 1 year, and I have only 1 year of taxes. The required documents aren't required for all types of companies, so there's an option to put not applicable there. 3 to 5 years, 5 years of tax returns were not submitted, signed as required. So we ask for 3 years for non-construction companies. So again, please sign the signature page of the tax returns, because we'll ask for it. I know a lot of people file their taxes electronically these days, but you still need to sign that document. Where to go for help? You can contact the Department of Procurement Services by calling the 312-744-4900 number. There's certifications officers answering the phones from 8:30 to 5 p.m. during the week. So if you have any questions, just call us. We're located here in City Hall, room 806. If you need help uploading documents, if you don't have access to a scanner or just having difficulty, we do have a consultant, Stephanie Edmond. She's also on the 8th floor. She's in room 800. Her phone number is 312-744-1266, and she is by appointment only, but you can call her. There's also your area assist agency, so there's if you have additional questions, you can go there. Well, that's the end of it. So if you have any questions specific to your application or your company, we're here for the next 10, 15 minutes.
Would you take questions now?
Give the microphone.
Got it. Thank you.
what's the minimum amount of time you need to be in business before you could submit the application?
We don't have a minimum requirement. You would just have to explain that you just started your business, but during the application process, all of the documents that you provide will help us understand if you have that experience to do those NAICS codes that you're requesting. But there
So
is
then
no
you just need like personal tax returns, then you wouldn't
Right.
need the
As far
business's
as
tax returns. Okay.
Tax returns, yeah, we'll look at the individual tax returns. 3 years or 5 years.
What specifically are you looking for in the site visits?
So the site visits, it depends. It depends what type of business.
supplier.
So, okay, so a supplier, we have regulations that are online if you wanted to take a look at specific requirements for that. But for a supplier, we'll look at your inventory, yeah. So we'll go to your warehouse or where your inventory is.
The inventory, your employees, the location of where you store your goods.
Yeah. So your
So the question was, what we're looking for I'm sorry, I'm Victoria Wright. I'm a senior certification officer. But we're looking for your location if we're coming out to do a site visit. So if it's a site visit for a supplier, we want to see the supplies. We'll probably ask you for your agreement of who you're purchasing the supplies from, who you're selling the supplies to. We want to see staff, we want to see your office, but most importantly, we want to see your inventory. So if it's a construction site visit, we're coming to your site to see where your office is, what kind of supplies you have, what kind of equipment you have to actually do construction. But if it's a DBE site visit and your professional services, we're basically coming out to see your office and to see if you have staff. If you don't have staff, that's fine. If you're doing your business out of your home, that's fine. But we still have to come out because it's a DBE or ACDBE, and that's a federal program.
Right, if you're a trucking company, we'll
Want to
look
see
at
the
your
trucks.
trucks. So it all depends, but yeah, mainly for suppliers and distributors, we're looking at the warehouse to see that you have the inventory. And then interviewing you, or the owner personally, and asking a whole bunch of questions, standard questions usually.
And even what you tell them about the different trucks. So depending on what you're
The
got
different
mic
trucks.
on. Yeah, if it's a trucking company, we want to see what type of truck you have. So if you're supposed to be delivering sand.
Oh,
or
right.
it should be a dump truck. So,
Or a flatbed
or a
truck,
flatbed,
or
yeah.
those type of things.
So for professional services, you're looking at addresses and office visits.
So for professional services, we usually just do a site visit for the federal program because
Okay.
it's required of all DBE, CDBE applications. But yeah, we would visit your office, see your staff. If you have staff, you might not have staff, and
Right.
just go through a questionnaire and ask you questions.
And
For DBE and ACDBE, there's a set questionnaire. So everybody in DBE, ACDBE program gets the same questions. If it's a construction company or a trucking company, you might get different questions.
okay.
What sort of employee information do you look after or do you need?
Well, for employees, we look, we look at their W-2s or 1099s. So for the local program, the majority of your employees need to be in the 6-county region. So, are they in Cook County, or are they in, or outside of the 6 counties? So we'll look at that.
I'm not looking for their background information unless it's a problem with that. So for employees, like Regent said, is making sure that the employees are in the 6-county region. If you have a partner, then we're going to want the partner's information as well, like their resume and the 51% owner's resume. If you're claiming that you have a lot of staff and they do a lot of things, we might ask for their resume, depending on what's going on with we don't believe that the owner is the one controlling the company, then we might ask for resumes for the other people that are on your staff. But usually, if it's a small company and there's only 3 or 4 staff, we're more concerned about the owner. But like she said, especially if it's a site visit, we want to make sure that they're in the 6 county regions. Nobody over here? No other questions? Well, we can come off, and then if anybody has a question, a personal question about your own file, we'll be here to ask, because sometimes people don't want to ask if it's about their own personal company. So we'll stay in the room and answer your questions personally.